My name is Claire, and this isn't easy to admit. I never thought I'd be one of those people with secrets. The kind that gnaw at you when the house is quiet. The kind that whisper to you in the dark. But here I am, about to tell you something I never thought I'd say. It started simple, like most things do. Ethan and I had been married for 7 years, and for the first few, everything felt magical. He was sweet, attentive, the kind of man who'd leave notes on the mirror, bring me my favorite coffee without asking, hold my hand in public like we were still in the honeymoon phase. I thought I was lucky, and maybe for a while, I really was. But love can disappear without slamming the door. It started small, less texting during the day, fewer kisses goodnight. Conversations that used to stretch into the early hours were replaced by silence, or worse, scrolling. I tried not to panic. I told myself this was normal. That routine settles in after a while. That he was just tired, busy, distracted. But the days started to blur. I'd make dinner, and he'd barely look at the plate. I'd talk, and he'd nod, his eyes somewhere else. One night, I asked him if he still found me interesting. He looked up from his phone, gave a quick smile, and said, "Of course," then went back to whatever was on the screen. I remember staring at my fork for a long time after that, trying not to cry. I started waking up before him just to watch his face, to remind myself of the man I married, the man I once couldn't wait to grow old with. But even in sleep, he seemed far away. That's when I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just lonely, I was invisible. Then Adam came back. He was Ethan's best friend from college. I'd only met him twice, years ago. But when he moved back to town, Ethan invited him over for dinner. It was casual, friendly, but I remember the way Adam looked at me. He smiled, really smiled, like he saw me. He asked how I'd been, said I looked different, a little tired, but beautiful. I laughed it off. But the truth? That was the first real compliment I'd heard in months. When Ethan stepped into the kitchen, Adam leaned a little closer and said I seemed sad. He said it gently, like it wasn't a judgment, just an observation. No one had noticed that in so long. After dinner, Adam said goodbye and told me to take care of myself. Not just in passing. He said it like he meant it, and it stayed with me, long after he left. Adam started visiting more often. At first, it was always with Ethan. They'd watch games, drink beer, catch up. But sometimes, Adam would come by on his own. He'd say he was dropping something off, or just happened to be nearby. Every time, my heart beat faster than it should have. We talked about music, books, small things that made me feel human. He asked about my artwork, about my dreams, about things Ethan used to ask in the beginning, but hadn't mentioned in years. I found myself dressing up when I knew Adam might stop by, fixing my hair, wearing lipstick again. I hated how much I looked forward to it, but I also loved how alive I felt when he was around. It was harmless, and it wasn't. Then Ethan left for a business trip, 5 days. He packed without much conversation, gave me a quick kiss on the forehead and said he'd call when he landed. He didn't ask if I'd miss him. I didn't ask if he'd miss me. That night, I sat on the porch alone. The sky was quiet, my chest wasn't. And then, my phone buzzed. It was Adam. He said he knew Ethan was away, and he just wanted to check in. Said I didn't have to be alone if I didn't want to be. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied, I could use some company. He showed up 20 minutes later, with a bottle of red wine and a familiar, careful smile. We sat on the porch, talked for hours, laughed more than I had in weeks. He looked at me and said, "You deserve more than this silence, Claire." And for the first time in months, I let the tears fall. Not loud, just quiet rivers down my cheeks. He didn't ask why, he didn't have to. He just reached out and took my hand. His hand was warm, steady, real. I didn't pull away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from guilt, but from the terrifying realization that I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Seen, heard, held. Even if it was just my hand, I told myself nothing happened. And technically, it didn't. But my heart, it had crossed a line. When Ethan came home from his trip, it was like nothing had happened. He walked through the door, dropped his bag, and said a casual, "Hey," like I was just part of the furniture. He didn't notice the way I looked at him differently, the way my body tensed at his touch, the way something inside me had quietly shifted. He told me about the conference, the hotel, the steak dinner he had with some investors. I nodded, smiled where I was supposed to. But inside, I was unraveling. I kept thinking about Adam, not just what he said, but how he said it, like I mattered. That night, as we lay in bed, Ethan rolled over and fell asleep within minutes. Meanwhile, I stared at the ceiling, heart racing, mind spinning. I whispered to myself, "What am I doing here?" Days passed. I tried to act normal, tried to go back to who I was, but I couldn't. Every little moment, the forgotten goodnights, the missed conversations, the cold silences, they felt louder now. I started avoiding Ethan without even realizing it. I stopped cooking his favorite meals, stopped asking how his day went, stopped hoping for him to ask how mine was. And then one afternoon, I saw Adam again. It was unplanned. He had come by to drop off a book he said I'd love. We stood in the doorway. Awkward at first, then comfortable. He looked into my eyes and said, "You're not okay, are you?" I wanted to say yes, to lie, to protect myself from what I was feeling, but I couldn't. So I nodded and said softly, "No, I'm not." He didn't ask for more, didn't push. He just said, "You don't have to carry it alone." And somehow, that felt like the kindest thing anyone had said to me in years. That night, I sat across from Ethan during dinner. He was eating quietly, scrolling through something on his phone. And suddenly, I couldn't hold it anymore. I said, "Ethan, do you still love me?" He looked up, surprised. He said of course he did, that I was just being emotional again, that he'd had a long day and didn't want to fight. But I wasn't trying to fight. I was trying to feel something, anything. So I asked again, "Do you even see me anymore?" He rolled his eyes, said I was being dramatic, that I always did this when he was busy. That was it. That was the moment I broke. I stood up, walked into the living room, and sat there for an hour, just breathing. Then I picked up my phone and texted Adam. "I can't keep pretending," he replied in seconds. "You don't have to." 2 days later, Ethan had to travel again. I didn't cry when he left. I didn't feel sad or even angry. I felt numb. Adam came over that night. He didn't touch me, didn't kiss me. He just sat next to me on the couch and held my hand. And in that moment, I knew I had already left my marriage long ago. I had just finally caught up to the truth. Nothing physical happened that night, but something deeper did. I allowed myself to be seen, fully, without shame. I cried in front of Adam, told him how broken I felt, how guilty I was for falling out of love. He didn't judge me, he just listened. And that meant more than I could ever explain. When Ethan came home days later, I didn't wait. I told him everything. Not about Adam, not directly. But I told him I wasn't happy, that I hadn't been for a long time, that I felt alone, unseen, unloved. He tried to deny it, tried to say it was just a rough patch, that all marriages go through seasons. But this wasn't a season. It was a silence that had become permanent. I told him I needed space, time to think, time to breathe. He didn't argue, not much. Maybe he saw it too. The cracks, the distance, the part of me that had already gone. I moved in with a friend for a while, started therapy, started writing again. I took long walks, read books I'd been putting off for years, drank coffee slowly, and for the first time in so long, I felt like myself again. Not Claire the wife, not Claire who waits, just Claire. Adam didn't chase me, didn't try to rush into anything. He gave me space, time, respect. We met for lunch sometimes, talked about art, laughed, listened. And slowly, without meaning to, I started healing. Not because of Adam, not because of Ethan, but because I finally chose myself. So, no. This isn't a story about betrayal. It's a story about silence, about forgetting your worth, about remembering who you are when no one else seems to care. And if you're listening to this and you feel like you're disappearing, please know, you're not crazy. You're not selfish. You're not broken. You're just human. And you deserve to be loved in a way that doesn't make you question your value. Not sometimes, not occasionally, every day.